I debated whether to keep this sermon. It seems like every week anymore, there's something that calls a minister to scrap the sermon and write a new one. But I have come to believe that what we do here, Sunday to Sunday, is what the world needs. It's what we need to get through the world. And so I'm not going to scrap the sermon on gratitude in tough times. And maybe it's, well, I think it's pretty connected, actually. Growing up in the Pentecostal church, we used to sing this old American gospel song. Maybe some of you know it. Count Your Blessings. Do you know that song? Are you ever burdened with a load of care? Does the cross seem heavy you are called to bear? Count your many blessings. Angels will attend, and you will be singing at the journey's end. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God has done. Well, seriously, come on. It seems a little simplistic, doesn't it? I mean, that's all well and good maybe when your wallet is fat, when the kids are doing well in school and everyone in the family's healthy. But for most of us, life doesn't stay that way. Count your blessings when loved ones die too soon, when the job you counted on is gone, when relationships are broken and life isn't turning out the way you hoped and planned. The truth is, we can't will ourselves to feel more grateful, but we can engage in practices of gratitude, even when we're not feeling it. More than counting your blessings, though, gratitude is both a feeling and a practice that can sustain us in good times and bad. Unitarian Universalist minister Galen Gingrich believes that the practice of gratitude should be the central identifying practice of our faith, Unitarian Universalism. He wrote, "In the same way that Judaism is defined by obedience, Christianity by love, and Islam by submission, I believe that Unitarian Universalism should be defined by gratitude." He's not talking about a feeling of gratitude, though, but what he recommends might help there too. He writes further, two dimensions of gratitude make it fitting as our defining religious practice. One has to do with a discipline of gratitude, the other with an ethic of gratitude. The discipline of gratitude reminds us how utterly dependent we are on the people in the world around us for everything that matters. From this flows an ethic of gratitude that obligates us to create a future that justifies an increasing sense of gratitude for the human family as a whole. The ethic of gratitude demands that we nurture the world that nurtures us in return. It is our duty, he writes, to foster the kind of environment that we want to take in and therefore become. So Gingrich is recommending a philosophy of life that centers on gratitude, lives which cultivate it on purpose and then create a world in which gratitude is easier for the next generation. But he's not the first to suggest this. The staff laughed at me this week when I started to talk about the Stoics, but this month contained Stoic Week. You're laughing too, that's all right. It's an initiative of the University of Exeter in the United Kingdom, which explores the possibilities of Stoic practice to improve modern life. Stoic philosophy has been given a bad name in our culture. We call people stoic who seem to experience no emotions. I think we may call sociopaths stoic. But in fact, the ancient Stoics wanted only to avoid the most negative emotions as a way of fostering gratitude for life that soared above the conditions of everyday existence. It seems to me no one has ever practiced the ethic of gratitude, the discipline of gratitude, more fully than the ancient Stoics, who emphasized working on improving the things that are within our control to improve, many of which are internal. They said happiness doesn't come mainly from external sources like money or career, Happiness is primarily about one's mental state, one's link to those things sometimes. So the Stoics asked, how does a person go about leading a virtuous life? Gratitude, they said, is key. It's both a result of and a foundation of Stoic philosophy. As the Stoic Cicero said, gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all the others. So the goal, wrote Epictetus, was to be able to be, quote, sick and yet happy, in peril and yet happy, dying and yet happy, in exile and yet happy, in disgrace and yet happy. This, again, is not the absence of emotion. It is the ability to see and think clearly, to keep to the good life, even in the face of real human experience. They prescribed a path for getting there. The Stoic philosophers, first of all, recommended that you wake each morning and offer gratitude from your bed for those things which are yours. But then they said something that seems antithetical to happiness and gratitude on its face. They told their followers, yes, enjoy all the good things that come to you, people and health and work and money, but also meditate often on losing those things. That includes life itself. Seneca, a Stoic philosopher, wrote to a friend, forget all else and concentrate your thoughts on this one thing, not to fear the name of death. Through long reflection, make death one of your close acquaintances, so that if the situation arises, you're able even to go out and meet it. Maybe there's some idealism there. Robert Emmons is something of a modern-day Stoic. He's a professor of psychology at UC Davis, and he's studied for years and written about the science of gratitude. He believes, after studies, that about 50% of our tendency toward happiness or unhappiness, about 50% of that is preset in our genetics, he says. 10% is due to external forces beyond our control, but he thinks 40% of the happiness we do or do not feel is within our control, coming as the result of habits and practices. And so he says living a life of gratitude is more about intention than about feeling. In his book, Gratitude Works, he makes the case that gratitude is not just possible during difficult times, that it's one of the only things that can help us get through them. He recommends, like the Stoics, a few practices. The first one, which sounds something like the Stoics' prescriptions, is remember the bad. That's what he calls it, remembering the bad. He says it works this way. Think of the worst times in your lives. Aren't you happy already? Think of the worst times in your life, your sorrows, your losses, your sadness, and then remember that there you are, able to remember them, that you made it through the worst time in your life. You got through the trauma, you got through the trial, you endured the temptation, you survived the bad relationship, you're making your way out of the dark. Remember the bad things, then look to see where you are now. Maybe some of those bad things, he suggests, help to shape you. He once conducted a study asking people with debilitating illnesses to write an essay about a time when they felt a deep sense of gratitude. He wrote some about that study. He said, I asked them to let themselves recreate that experience in their minds so they could feel the emotions as if they had transported themselves back into the event itself. I also had them to reflect on what they felt in that situation and how they expressed those feelings. In the face of progressive diseases, people often find life extremely challenging, painful, and frustrating. I wondered whether it would be possible even for them to find anything to be grateful about. For many of them, life revolved around visits to the pain clinic and the pharmacy. I wouldn't have been at all surprised if resentment overshadowed gratefulness. As it turned out, though, most respondents had trouble settling on a specific instance. They simply had so much in their lives they were grateful for. I was struck, he writes, by the profound depth of feeling that they conveyed in their essays, and by the apparent life-transforming power of gratitude in many of their lives. It was evident from reading these accounts that 1, gratitude can be an overwhelmingly intense feeling. 2, gratitude for gifts that others easily overlook can be the most powerful and frequent form of thankfulness. And 3, gratitude can be chosen in spite of one's situation or circumstances. He concludes, I was also struck by the redemptive twist that occurred in nearly half of these narratives. Out of something bad, suffering, adversity, affliction, came something good, new life or opportunities, for which the person felt profoundly grateful. Not grateful that something bad happened, but gratitude in the middle of something bad happening. Gratitude in sickness and in health. The world's religions also call us to this practice. It's said that the Buddha sometimes instructed monks to begin their day by taking a sitting cloth out into the woods and meditating on a series of moments or people in their lives for which they were grateful. This practice was meant to gladden the heart. The Christian disciple Paul wrote, "In everything give thanks." The Sufi poet Rumi wrote the poem The Guest House. Maybe you've heard it. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. But maybe this isn't sitting well with you. Maybe you're saying, yeah, right. You don't know what's happened to me. And that's true. And what's more, gratitude shouldn't be about ignoring the difficulties of life. How shallow and empty it would be to pretend that death didn't hurt, that separation wasn't painful, that illness wasn't a big deal, or unfulfilled dreams had no effect on us. How pointless to pretend that we aren't all broken somehow. I don't know what has happened to you. It's true. But there are lights along the path who can point us to gratitude in painful circumstances. One of them for me, since seminary, has been Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Bonhoeffer, you may know, was a German Lutheran pastor who spoke out against Hitler's persecution of the Jews. He was jailed, then transferred to a concentration camp, then released. And after Bonhoeffer was released, he participated in a failed attempt on the life of Adolf Hitler, for which he was tried and executed. In the midst of all the suffering that really was a shadow over Dietrich Bonhoeffer's life from the very beginning, as he lost person after person whom he loved to the bullets and the nooses of the Nazis, he wrote, "There's nothing that can replace the absence of someone dear to us, and one should not even attempt to do so. One must simply hold out and endure it. At first that sounds very hard, but at the same time it's also a great comfort. For to the extent the emptiness truly remains unfilled, one remains connected to that other person through it." And here I think is the most powerful couple of sentences. It is wrong to say that God fills the emptiness, but gratitude transforms the torment of memory into silent joy. One bears what was lovely in the past not as a thorn, but as a precious gift deep within, a hidden treasure of which one can always be certain. From prison, Bonhoeffer wrote the following sentence: "In normal life, we hardly realize how much more we receive than we give, and life cannot be rich without such gratitude." I am humbled by Bonhoeffer's example of gratitude in difficult circumstances. It's important to note that all this work on gratitude is for you, for me, to improve our lives, not because we should be more grateful. Who needs one more thing to feel guilty about? We're religious liberals. We feel guilty about all kinds of things. Not to have one more thing to feel guilty about, but because your life is extraordinary and valuable, too valuable to be lived in fear and anxiety. And the mindset with which we approach our lives really does make a difference in our experience. Research tells us that the practice of gratitude can even lead our lives to be longer and healthier.